Hey guys, Deep here. So look at this merch. Do you see a difference after I put it on and take it off? So basically the party buff is similar to all sort of accessory or merch. Both of them give stats, but the only difference between them is one can be seen while the other one cannot be seen until you get into the dungeon itself. And very often that people always focus on how to improve their weapon, accessory or even merch, but always curious that why they are still losing pretty hard against their enemies either in Arena or Master Arena. The answer is pretty simple, and it is because they have neglected how important the party buff can do to affect your overall team performance. So always remember, just because something that you don't see doesn't mean it don't exist or not important. Let me give you an example. Both you and your enemies are using a full melee team in the arena. Your enemies is using the 150% melee attack party buff, while your team is running 100% melee attack and 1 skill regen speed. It is pretty obvious that you're gonna lose the game due to the stat difference from the party buff itself. Even if you can outplay and win the first match, what about the second or even third match? It is still gonna be hard, and you have to know that party buff is not just about one hero, it's about the entire team, and how you can fully utilize it and build a strong synergy party buff to win against your enemies. So in case you are using a team that has a bad party buff synergy, you are basically like going to the arena without using any accessory or merch. So you guys always see me making tier lists and reviews on all type of heroes, but the way how I rate a hero is not just looking at the skill itself, but rather aim for their party buff first. Whether or not a hero is gonna stay for a meta for a long time, or it's just gonna be as bad as when it first released, party buff is already a 50% deciding factor to decide the fate of a hero throughout the entire game. So you can see why it is so important to look at the party buff first before you decide to build out any heroes. And right now we'll go through all the 10 party buff in the game, so let's go. For the first one, we have HP party buff. This party buff is the most standard and the safest one. It is because it can be used by everyone, either be melee or range, so you can never go wrong with this party buff. So far it works pretty well in most of the contents except for the call and raids, whereas you need to maximize your damage as much as possible. So moving on to the next is defense. This is pretty much similar to the HP one, but I would prefer the defense over HP because defense will give more toughness compared to a HP. But overall, both of them are pretty good and almost the same to each other. And for the next one, we have melee attack party buff. Among so many party buff, I like this one the most because I'm a melee player and this is one of the best party buff for the melee heroes in the arena and master arena. It can be used in everywhere else except for the Colosseum because most of the Colosseum units are mainly ranged heroes. One of the reasons why Lilith, Lyn, Beth and Sohi are so good not only because they have a strong skill set, but rather they also have a good party buff which is melee attack. Overall, this is one of the best party buff that you can get for all the melee heroes out there. Moving on to the next is range attack party buff. This is pretty much the same as the melee attack party buff, but it works on the range unit instead. So if you plan to build any range team, you must have at least one range attack party buff in the team, because it will significantly affect your overall damage. In my previous video, I tested out double crit range team by using Amaru and Bianca, but sadly the damage is not that impressive, so in other words, you still need at least one range attack party buff in the team for more damage. Overall, this is also one of the best party buff that you can get in the game. While for the next one, we have skill regen party buff. Skill regen speed is actually pretty good, but it's just that with the current limited hero setup and skill set, it has yet to unleash its full potential in the arena. Only if they introduce more and more skill and run type of heroes like Veronica, Lucy, Meryl, then this party buff might stand a chance to be meta in the future. But in order to make this party buff to become meta in the future, the skill regen speed party buff user might also has a high skill damage burst just like Meryl with 2 skill chain to cover up the loss from the range attack states. But this party buff usually works well on the range heroes only, but not for the melee. Moving on to the next is skill damage. Skill damage party buff is just a really bad party buff right now in the current meta. It is because it can't synergize very well with most of the meta heroes like Lilith, Beth, Lyn, MK or Nari because most of them deal damage based on the default attack. Maybe in the future this party buff can be useful only if they release a better skill regen speed party buff hero who does very high skill damage just like Meryl. Otherwise it's gonna stay as bad as it is right now. While for the next one we have crit party buff. Crit party buff is also one of the strongest party buff for a range team and it is almost as good as a range attack party buff. Although crit party buff is good, but it's not as much as for melee team because melee attack party buff still works better for melee team. It is because melee attack party buff will give more consistent damage compared to crit, and most of the melee heroes will require some skill regen speed, which means most of the time they'll be using either Mirror Sorcery or Pokewatch instead of Sharpshooter. Since most of the melee heroes don't run with Sharpshooter, so it's kinda hard for them to crit with just 30-ish crit rate chance. Overall, crit is still good for the melee team, but it will work even better for a ranged team instead. Moving on to the next, we have Mono Attack Play Buff. Mono Element Play Buff can be good and also bad at the same time. The good thing about Mono Attack Play Buff is, Mono team is very strong, especially in the Master Arena, whereas you can just ban out 2 most counter units, while the bad thing is, someone is lacking the flexibility. You can't synergize very well with other elements hero due to the party buff, so once you build the Mono Element heroes, it's kinda hard for you to switch into a different element team. In short, it's not recommended for earlier mid-game players to build these Mono Attack Party Buff heroes, because generally Mono team only works well for the endgame players who have massive stats. And come to the last one, we have melee defense and range defense. Basically they are almost the same, but just that one of them is good against the melee heroes, while the other one is good against the range heroes. These 2 party buffs are kinda bad in the arena, because you can't really expect who is going to up against you and what heroes they will be using in the arena. So unless you are playing the Master Arena, whereas you can tell the enemy's team by looking at your draft, then it could still be somewhat usable. Otherwise, I would say it's not really worth to build the heroes that has such party buff, because it's just bad for overall contents. So that's all for today's video, and I hope you guys enjoy watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!